Step into the Oracle Parlor, a podcast where those interested in witchcraft, psychic abilities, ghosts, and all things paranormal come to sip and spill the magical tea. This parlor is a space to grow by maintaining our curiosity over fear when it comes to the spooky and the paranormal. I'm your host, Jenny, otherwise known as Fantasma Witch. I'm a previous visual storytelling artist from animation, now full-time psychic witch, who is getting her MA in psychology to become a licensed therapist. Every other episode, I will share my paranormal experiences, different witchy experiences on a variety of topics, while other episodes, I will be talking with witchy guests of all backgrounds, from writers to artists to well-known social media witches, so we can learn about their practices and how they grew into their personal power. So get cozy and grab your tea. It's time to get mystical. Hello and welcome back, my mystical, magical besties, to yet another episode of the Oracle Parlor podcast. Now, if you have seen online, whether it's on my Instagram or on Patreon, you may have heard that the podcast is going to be going on a hiatus. And what I'd like to do is to at least provide one episode a month, but the likelihood is it will most likely be going on a little bit of a break. And the reason for this is simply because I'm very busy with school, starting my master's program in psychology. And I don't have time to do the beautiful in-depth interviews that I really enjoyed doing over this last 20 some odd episodes. I have plenty of guests on a list that I plan on contacting and hopefully recording more episodes in between quarters of school. So there's just a little heads up before we get into this episode. And, if you're interested in still listening to me talk about all things ghosty, magical, and psychic, you can check out my Patreon because every month on my Patreon, I'm doing monthly meditations in which I lead you through a guided meditation focused on a specific topic for that month. So at the moment, we have done a heart opening for psychic development. There is one on meeting your core guides. We're going to be doing some energy ones soon that I'm really excited about. So don't worry, you can go check out the paid Patreon tiers for access to those classes. Or if you're interested in just hearing me chit chat more, I also have short video chit chats on there. They're kind of like podcast episodes condensed into anywhere between 10 to maybe about 15 minutes of me recording and chatting with you about different topics that sort of come up. Speaking of topics that just sort of come up, it's February, and boy, what a year it has been, and we're only 2 months in. And I hope you are all staying safe, staying grounded, and staying vigilant within your communities. So, this month I thought I would talk a little bit about partners and community within the magical psychic sphere and share a couple of my stories and talk a little bit about why I believe it's important, whether you are a solitary practitioner or you are someone who actively participates in group rituals or practices, why it's really an important thing to kind of like have someone, whether that's a group or one-on-one, that you can kind of talk to when it comes to your psychic, magical, and spiritual development. So, I think first it would be fun to share a couple of stories. Now, you'll have to forgive me if I've shared these before. I'm starting to lose track of which stories I have already shared. So, as some of you may know or may not, my partner is highly sensitive to sensing energies and spirits, just like myself. It was actually one of the things that we first bonded on when we first met each other. It was the thing that really brought us together was this shared experience. So when we had first met, and I believe I did share this story in the episode on my abuelita's place, her haunted house. I had been seeing what I had described as a peeking ghost in the room that I was staying at. And since I already shared the story, I'll just kind of breeze through it. But essentially, I had been seeing a shadowy figure shape peeking into my room. There were lots of different things happening at my grandma's place. Check out that episode. And I for a long time just thought it was me. I thought I was just seeing things or weird things were happening. I tried to write a lot of it off because at the time I still hadn't come into full acceptance of my magical psychic abilities. And so when I had met my partner, we had only been dating a couple months or a couple weeks, honestly, when he first came over to my abuelita's place, and he had seen the peeking ghost. And this really, really, really helped me on a very deeply personal level because never in my life had I had someone see and sense the same exact thing that I was without any prior discussion about it. Outside of my family, that had never happened before. And if you listen to the episode where I talk about growing up in a haunted house myself, my sister and I would have some similar experiences, but they were never quite the same, and we never had the same thing happen at the same exact time. Versus when I was dating my now married partner, I had heard from him how he had seen the same exact shadow shape in the same exact way peeking around the corner in the same exact area, everything. Described it down to the very last detail. He had seen it when I had seen it. He had seen it, and I hadn't said a single word about the Peking ghost. I had not said a single word about my experiences from any part of my life. I hadn't even talked about how I was into paranormal, ghost, weird, strange things. And yet it came up naturally because he had sensed it in the moment. And this really, the reason why this was so eye-opening for me was because it was extremely validating to have someone outside of my immediate familial circle see and sense the same exact thing I did without any prior context. Suddenly, it was almost as if the things that I had been experiencing were extremely real, because to me, they weren't prior to that. And this is why I wanted to open up with this story that I have told it before, but I wanted to open with this because I feel like this is a really great reminder for anyone who is doing any kind of psychic work, specifically, any kind of spiritual communication, uh, mediumship, anything of that nature. Having someone that you can talk to about it is extremely important. And there's so many different levels when I say talk to. And we'll kind of dive into those a little bit in this episode. But first and foremost, it doesn't have to be like in my situation, I was dating the person. It doesn't have to be someone you're dating, but just having someone who understands and accepts, that this is something that you want to practice. Hopefully, you can find someone who is interested like you are. Now, my partner, not interested in this stuff at all. Like, he finds it interesting. It is not something he actively wants to do or engage with. And there's nothing wrong with that. You can be extremely sensitive. You do not have to do anything about it. You don't have to become a medium. You don't have to make it your full-time job or your full persona. You can just be like, yeah, that's a weird thing that happens, like my partner. But having somebody who can specifically validate The things that you experience will be incredibly helpful on your journey to development. Because for me personally, and maybe you're not like me, and that's okay. Do want to say that little disclaimer. But for me personally, it was almost like the doors swung open. They swung open to finally allow me to trust myself and not think that I'm just making it up. The doors finally swung open to allow more experiences like that to actually come through and happen for me. The doors opened in my mind of possibility and suddenly questioning, huh, is it possible that all of the experiences I've had aren't really just me making things up? Is it possible that there's more to this? Another example, and I don't think I've shared this story on the show before, is one time me and my partner went to a local cafe here in Los Angeles, and it's one that we had been to a few times. And we went, got a coffee, decided to sit down, and I was reading a book, and he was reading something else or doing something, I forget. But we were just there to hang out at the cafe. That was it. That was our intention. Nothing magical, nothing mystical. However, as I was sitting there trying to read my book, I kept getting this sensation that there was something or someone behind me. And it was this nagging feeling that I couldn't ignore. And so I kind of turned my head to try to get a look at the rest of the cafe from where we were sitting. If I just turned my head, I could see everybody within the cafe behind us. And when I turned to look, one thing was extremely out of place. And now that I'm talking about this, I was actually in line when this happened. I had gotten up from where I was reading, got in line to order like a cookie or something, and I had felt this nagging sensation. And so when I looked, the thing that was out of place was I had seen very, very, very clearly in my mind's eye an old woman who was kind of like hunched over this gentleman who was on his laptop at the cafe working. And she had her hands on his shoulders. And it was almost like I could clearly see her all the way down to near her ankles. It was just sort of like I don't remember seeing anything down there. So it was almost like she was hovering over him with her hands digging into him. And I was like, oh my gosh, this is so weird. Like I could clearly see this old woman. And I was like, this is so weird and this is so interesting. I'm gonna try to see what's happening here. Like I made the conscious choice in that moment that I was gonna psychic into what I had seen and try to see what was going on. And so I kind of pushed in psychically to try to see like who this woman was and what was going on. And I started getting information. I got who this woman was, how she was related to the man, what she was doing. And I'm not going to share it because just for privacy's sake, just the one thing I will say, kind of like as the overarching theme, she was being extremely judgy and domineering of him. That's what I will say. And she was related to him. And as soon as I started to get this information, in my mind's eye, I saw her head snap to look at me. And then it was like suddenly she was front and center in my face, in my mind's eye. And I had heard, "You're being very rude. You're being very nosy." Like she was mad. She did not appreciate that I had tried to psychically rifle through who she was, tried to sense who she was. She took offense. And I immediately, when I got this sensation and saw and felt this and heard her say, like, hey, this is rude, I immediately said, you know what? You're right. I'm sorry. That was, uncalled for. didn't ask permission. I didn't check in. I didn't introduce myself. It would have been the equivalent of like if you were working at your laptop on a cafe on something very personal, like you're journaling or something, and somebody comes up and just starts like looking over your shoulder trying to read what you're doing, is essentially what I did. Big no-no. Even if this person was someone who had passed, it was not my place to push into trying to read who she was. And if anything, it's just like I always say on the show, it's like with living people. You don't just suddenly start trying to rifle through someone's backpack. You introduce yourself. You say, "Hey, what are you doing there? What's going on?" Ask questions. Don't try to forcefully take it, which is what I was doing. Lesson learned. So I apologized and I pulled my psychic energy and back into myself essentially, and I said, "Hey, sorry, you're right. My bad. I won't do that." And so I ordered whatever I was ordering, and I walked back to where my partner was sitting, and I was like, I gotta see if my partner is picking up on anything. I gotta see if I gotta see if he can sense anything. And so we kind of played almost like a psychic game. So I said to him, "Hey, can you just do me a favor and just like open yourself up to sensing?" And he was like, "What do you mean?" And I said, "Well, just see if you sense anything in the cafe. I don't want to say what, I'm not going to tell you what it is. I'm not going to tell you where or anything. I just want to see if you sense anything. And if you do, tell me what you're picking up on." And he was like, "Okay." He took a beat, looked around, and went, oh my gosh." And I said, "What?" And he said, "There is this tall, shadowy figure of a person with its hands on the shoulders of that guy at the laptop." That's how he had perceived this old woman. I had clearly seen that it was an old woman. He was seeing just the shadowy silhouette of her, but it was the same person and it was the same exact posture that I had seen her in. And again, this just blew my mind at the time. This was one of the first times that I had kind of tested and quizzed him and also myself to see, can we align with what we're seeing? And though it wasn't exactly the same, there were way too many similarities with no words spoken between us on what had been perceived by me for it to be just a coincidence. So I share these stories because these experiences, while not planned, were extremely helpful for me in my own development of mediumship and psychic faith in myself is really what it was. And so this is just one of the many ways that we can build psychic communities. If you have a one-on-one friend who maybe is also interested in this kind of stuff, who maybe has their own personal experiences that you can share with, fantastic. Now, do you have to be in the same location together? Like, do you have to be even in the same state? No. One of the really cool things that you can do is you can get on a Zoom call with someone who's interested in practicing different psychic skill sets. Maybe you have a friend in a different city or state. Maybe there's someone that you've met in a community that you want to meet one-on-one with on a Zoom call, and you can practice. Now, it may not be exactly the same as like running into a ghost or a spirit out at a cafe like me and my partner, but I'll share with you one of the examples from a group that I was in. I had participated in a group that this was years ago, we were developing our psychic skills. And what we were currently working on was trying to be able to psychically sense what was in somebody else's energy. And so, how we were doing that was we would pick the role of sender and receiver. One person would send, one person would receive. So the sender was supposed to think about a very specific memory. They needed to hold this memory very, very, very clearly in their mind and in their heart. That meant that they were visualizing, they were using all of their senses to visualize whatever this memory was, the sight, the sounds, the smells, the feelings, sensations, and yes, emotional feelings in their hearts is where they're holding that as well. So they were holding this memory to the best of their ability and they were projecting it outwards into their energy field. They were projecting their thoughts and their feelings outwards. And it was the receiver's job to sit and just be open to whatever they were receiving, whatever was being sent to them, whatever this memory was, with no prior talking about possible memories or what age or any of that. It was just pick a memory from sometime in your life. This person's going to tell you what they're picking up on. And so the sender would be sitting there meditating, sending. The receiver would be picking up on anything they would get from this person, and they would write down impressions, any visuals, anything of that style of sensing. And then after a certain allotted amount of time, it would close. The sender would stop sending, the receiver would stop receiving, and then they would switch roles without sharing anything yet. They wouldn't share anything just yet. They would swap roles, and suddenly you have the receiver now sending and the sender now receiving. And then, same thing, they would take notes. The allotted time was up, and then we would share what we had perceived and what we received from the other person. And we would circle or check off things that actually aligned with whatever was being sent or received. So this was yet another way for me to have this aha moment of there really is something to this. Because it's one thing to hear like me tell you these stories. And by the way, this exercise was absolutely amazing. I had seen almost one to one what I had perceived was what they were projecting. And same in the reverse, except for where mine was extremely visual, theirs was extremely based on emotions and blurbs, but they still got the picture. So like I got the image, but maybe not so much the other senses, whereas they got the feelings and the sensations that came with it. So having this kind of eye-opening experience can really help bolster your faith in your own abilities. Because again, like I was just saying, it's one thing to hear me tell these stories to you. It's one thing to hear anybody share their experiences and say, wow, this happened to me. Isn't that amazing? And we can be like, yeah, that's amazing. I totally believe you. I believe that you had this experience. I believe that it's real. But it's another thing to say, I believe I can do it. And that's where there's sometimes a disconnect. So, growing up, I had watched a lot of paranormal shows. I watched a lot of psychic mediums on shows do these amazing things. And then I would have my own experiences seeing and sensing things in my own home and spirits that I could not explain. And yet I would still sit there being like, "Oh, but I'm not like them on TV. That's different." Because it's one thing to believe someone else can do it. It's another thing to believe that we can do it. And the best way to begin is by building these psychic communities. So, again, the first one is to do the one-on-one. So, if you have a friend or somebody that you can do these online sort of like experiences of one sending and the other receiving, that's a great way to start dabbling. Now, I have already mentioned it in my story, but another great way to build psychic community is to actually go out and find groups. Now, the caveat here is that I know that it's very much a privileged thing to be in a location, to be in a place where you can have and find psychic circles, intuitive circles. And while yes, there are classes online, it can be difficult to find what you're looking for sometimes. Sometimes there are things that are offered locally that aren't offered online. So I just want to take a moment to acknowledge that it is a privilege to be able to engage in a psychic community circle in person. It's not always easy to find. So, if you can find them and you do feel comfortable to go out and experience them, it can be a great place to have these experimental um, practices, but it can also be a really great place to actually meet other like-minded folks that you may be able to continue to connect with even outside of the group. Because just like with, I was saying it's a privilege in location, it's also a privilege in regards to finances. And this is where there can be a bit of a difference when it comes to online versus in person. I've noticed that a lot of the in-person stuff that I have seen, and again, I'm in LA, so a lot of in-person stuff that I've seen is usually classes can range anywhere from 15 to like $30, depending. Sometimes it gets up there like maybe 35, 40. It's depending on like on how intense it is and what's going on. And we're just talking about like again, like practice circles, psychic circles, they're usually fairly cheaper when it's in person, but sometimes you find really cool collective groups online and it's like $2,000, which is quite a difference. So there are plenty of lovely people that you can find, like myself, who try to offer community spaces that are more affordable. So you're not spending thousands and thousands of dollars to have these kind of like psychic practice sessions and circles where you can meet other like-minded folks online and have these sessions together that you can create yourself. And so I do want to say, if you're interested in that, please check out some of the previous guests that I've had on this podcast. There are plenty of teachers who offer wonderful one-on-one psychic development circles. Um, a couple of them are pretty expensive, I will say that. So I'm not gonna like sugarcoat it. I do know one of the people I have interviewed has one that's like a couple $1,000s. But definitely check out their Patreons. Check out if even if you're not following people who have been on the podcast before, check out and see what they're offering on their Patreons. You may have even heard me talk before about uh, Greg and Dana Newkirk, which are a couple of paranormal investigators who have built a community on Patreon with a Discord, and it can be really beneficial having a place like that where you can go and communicate with others. And like I said, I have one on my Patreon. Another example off the top of my head, Rebecca, the Ghost Guide, who was the guest back in October of 2025, has a whole community as well. I believe Theron does. So, like, definitely check out these people, check out their Patreons, check out what people have in regards to just group community settings. And the reason why I'm stressing psychic group community settings is because when you're around like-minded people, whether that is one-on-one with a partner like me and my husband, whether you are with a friend one-on-one, or you are going to group circles online or in person, whatever that may be, being around people who are like-minded will help you in your psychic development. The obvious part of that statement is just being around other people who believe you can feel really, really good and affirming. Obviously, that's the number one thing, right? But there's more to it than just that. And this is something that I read recently in a book called, oh my goodness, I believe it is called, I'm gonna have to look. I'm going to put it in the show notes. One moment. It's called Your Sixth Sense: Unlocking the Power of Your Intuition by Bella Ruth Naparstek. And this book is written by someone who is both psychic intuitive as well as a therapist. So, this book had me immediately. Like, I was so excited for this book when I read it. But in the book, Bella Ruth talks about how being in community, being with other psychics, because in her book, she interviews all these different psychics from all different backgrounds, all different ages. She found that by being in community with other psychics, your own intuitive psychic abilities will open more and more. And that again isn't just because it is, but it isn't the only reason. It's not just because you have validation externally from people who believe in the same things you believe or close to the same things that you believe. But it's because there's something about being amongst other psychics where it's almost like, if you think of it, and this is what I believe, but it's almost like if you have a radio signal that's weak, and then you get all these other radio signals that are boosting one major antenna, one major radio tower, and all these other little ones that are beeping out into the void. They can enhance the signal. And that's kind of what Bella Ruth talks about in her book, is being able to come together in community will be not only boosting your signal, but the signal of those around you. So, especially with what's happening today, I believe it's really important for us to get out there, even if it's not in person, even if it's online, and find your psychic community. Find your psychic playmate partner. I like to say playmate because it's like that childlike wonder that we need to bring into the psychic uh, development arena that we're in, right? The more we can play and have fun and be in partnership with others who are also interested in these same things and these same experiences, the more you'll be able to open yourself up to your own abilities and help other people open up as well. And so don't be afraid to explore the communities that are out there, talk to people. And even if you're not actively practicing, like how I was explaining with sending and receiving and sitting with what's being sent your way and psychically picking up on it, even if you're just hanging out with someone else who is psychic, who is interested in the same things, that can bolster and open you up even more. And while, yes, just listening to this podcast, just participating in activities like listening to a podcast or watching a show that has these like really magical psychic core ideas will help you in kind of being more open, bringing your awareness to the curious, wondrous world of psychic magic. Dipping your toes into it is a whole new level to it. So continue finding those, people online who have videos or podcasts or offerings and absorb as much as you can through the media that they offer, but actually being able to like sit in the space with someone, whether that's energetically online or physically in person, can be such a bolster to your own development journey. And I don't think this gets talked about enough in the witchy online psychic communities. And as I said at the beginning of this episode, I'm not saying that you have to go from being a solitary practitioner to working in a coven with other people. You don't have to. Do what works best for you, but having people to talk to, even if you don't want to work directly with them or practice directly with them, but just having somebody that you can, again, connect with is going to be really beneficial and really validating and affirming for you. Even if you don't share all the same ideas, maybe you meet a group or other people who challenge your ideas to question, like, oh, I always thought ghosts were 100% trapped spirits of people who had died in tragic situations. But now that I'm conversing with other people about this same topic, I'm wondering if it's maybe not exactly what I thought it was at one point. And that's challenging, but it resonates in these ways and doesn't in others. It gets you thinking, it gets you questioning, it gets you exploring the space, it gets you out into the world in a different way of doing and thinking, which can be really beneficial in so many ways. If you are familiar with tarot, this concept that we're talking about of camaraderie and coming together to amplify and share in each other's experiences and lift each other up is the Three of Cups energy. And that's the kind of energy we want to bring into our psychic development at least at least one point in time. Even if we don't maintain it, just being able to dabble in that fun aspect of coming together and sharing our experiences and maybe even practicing and doing all these different kinds of things. But like I said, even just sitting with other people and talking about experiences that you've had, that they've had, and knowing that, you know, there are other people who have these experiences, and there are people who believe in you and what you can do, and vice versa. It can really help us to remember that we've always been psychic. Everyone is psychic. So I invite you to find ways to have camaraderie. I invite you into a sense of play and community because right now there's been such a detachment overall from community care, from support and validation of experiences. And this goes beyond what I'm talking about in the psychic and magical world. This is just the state of the world that we are in right now. Because even looking at social media, for example, social media used to really try to be a place where it was about sharing your experiences with others and coming together and having a good time. Or at least that was the attempt or the hope, right? I mean, even looking back at MySpace, it started to turn into what we commonly see now. And gosh, MySpace is dating me, huh? Um, but it just turned into a presentation of our persona, of our ego, of who we want to be, who we believe to be, and editing our lives down instead of authenticity. And so by coming together in these like weirdo, and I say weirdo lovingly, in these weirdo paranormal psychic witchy communities outside of just the social media posting to really engage with the community. That's special. That's what brings us not only together, but also supports each other and again enhances our belief in ourselves, in what we're doing and what we practice and all of that. And that goes beyond what we see on Instagram. That goes beyond what is just simply posted and walked away from. And I admit I do this too because I'm a small business. I have to be able to promote when my books are open for tarot readings. I have to be able to promote events that I'm going to be working at. I have to be able to share client reviews. But it's a different thing to meet somewhere like Patreon or at the local cafe or at the local esoterica shop and have these group circles and discussions, and to do so in a safe space where we can feel listened to and heard, and also feel safe enough to walk away if we don't feel good in the group, if we or we're not interested and it just doesn't vibe with us, to allow ourselves permission to do that. If anyone here is in LA like myself, there is a wonderful, wonderful place called the Philosophical Research Society. And I recently went to a dream working workshop, and I offer dream interpretations as part of my business, if you didn't know. And so I wasn't going to this for the workshop. I was going for the community circle. I was going to meet other like-minded people and to sit in a space, a safe space of being able to share in the weirdness and the deep subconscious that comes through in our dreams, and to connect with the collective unconscious on a conscious level. And this is why I highly recommend trying to find people or places that you can connect to. Tap into that Three of Cups energy. Tap into the childlike fun and play and wonder of it. And do what makes you feel comfortable, but can hopefully give you a secondary outside perspective. Because, again, while it's lovely, as someone who is a solitary practitioner, it is lovely being a solitary practitioner. But just like with the social spheres, we don't want to be caught in an echo chamber, right? And for anyone who's unaware of what that means, an echo chamber is literally what it sounds like. It's just you talking to yourself and listening to your echo. And that's the very literal idea of it, right? But what happens when you get stuck only in situations, only in groups where 100% of what is being shared is 100% of what is you agree with, right? So, like, for example, I may share stuff, beliefs, ideas that you don't agree with, but if anything, that's just furthering your own definition and clarity of your personal beliefs, of what you choose works for you and what doesn't work for you. It's still really good information. So even if we don't agree 100% of the time, you're still benefiting from that, which is why, again, community, it's not about building an echo chamber where everybody agrees with you on everything 100% of the time. Now, of course, there are people where there has to be a boundary and a line, where we don't tolerate intolerance, which in itself is a whole philosophical thing that we're not going to get into. But being able to have conversations with people that kind of open up our minds and our experiences for the psychic possibilities to come through. Because you've heard me say it once, you've heard me say it twice, you've heard me say it here on Patreon, on TikTok. No one knows 100%. No one knows 100% on any of this, on anything paranormal, psychic, or magical, because it's all, a lot of it is faith and belief. No one can say with 100% certainty. And it's because of that, it's really good to get into these kind of communities where you can hear other people's perspective and their own thoughts and opinions and learn something new about yourself or them, whether you agree or don't agree. It's all good information for growth. So I thought it was just really important to kind of discuss this idea of community and of discussion with others about the paranormal and the psychic. And I do want to, before we wrap up, I do want to mention one other thing, which is I have, or I had a teacher, and I'm not going to name names. Again, I'm going to, you know, preserve the privacy here. But I had a teacher who often talked about their current partner as someone who completely disagreed with their practice. They didn't believe any of the work that they were doing. They didn't believe in mediumship. They didn't believe in psychics. They didn't believe in tarot readers. They didn't believe in astrology. They didn't believe in, they thought it was all just hooey and made up garbage. And while my teacher often talked about how lonely that could get and how sad that was for them, they often used those moments with their partner as learning moments of seeing someone's perspective of someone who doesn't agree with anything that they do, but their partner was always respectable about it. Even though they didn't believe in what their partner was doing, they respected their beliefs and their practices. They never made fun of them for it. They never made them feel belittled or they never made them feel unsafe. So they were able to have relationship with this person that maybe didn't agree with them 100%, and that's okay because they found community elsewhere. They took the moments that they had with their partner who didn't fully believe in what was happening, even though that partner had experiences they couldn't explain, which always gave my teacher a kick because it's like, well, but even though they took those experiences as a moment of reflection and growth and how to better handle discussions with people who maybe don't agree with a lot of their beliefs. They also built this entire community of students, of mentors, of teachers in order to kind of balance that out. And within those groups, you ended up getting people of all different skill sets being able to connect and practice and have discussions. And so I really want to bring awareness, hopefully, to everyone of it's okay. I know I started my this episode with my stories on me and my partner and how my partner validates my experiences. That's rare. I am very privileged to have a partner who shares in those ideas and those beliefs and those experiences, who can validate things as they happen. That's rare though. And it's not necessary to have. And I want to make that very clear. What is important to have is, it's not the romantic partner or relationship that completely agrees with your spiritual practice or beliefs or psychic abilities or paranormal. It's being able to find people, again, the community, who can bring in that support and that care and that open-mindedness to open your heart and your mind to experiences as well as to just having that camaraderie, that having that group togetherness in some way, to some extent. So, I believe that's it for today, my friends. Definitely let me know what experiences you have had in group settings with getting validation. I want to hear your stories. Have you ever had something happen and someone else was able to validate it immediately for you? Have you ever had it happen where you weren't in a reading, you were just sort of like out and about and you had an experience and someone said, "Oh my gosh, I saw that too. I felt that too. I know exactly what you're talking about. I've had something similar." Please feel free to send an email to the oracleparlorpod@gmail.com. I would love to read your stories on the podcast. And yeah, again, if you haven't checked out the other guests that have been on the show, check them out. If you're looking for a community, check out what they have to offer. Check out my Patreon, see what I have on there, and get to talking to people, get to know people, start making those connections. And I wish you all a wonderful rest of February. Stay safe, stay grounded, and I will see you all in the next episode. Thank you so much for joining me in the parlor for this episode. If you want more psychic magical tips, make sure to follow me on Instagram and TikTok at Fantasma Witch. FANTASMAWITCH. Also, be sure to check out my Patreon, where I have a Discord community. I do Q&As, live classes, workshops, and more. To book a reading or consultation directly with me, you can go to my website, www.phantasmawitch.com. All of these links can be found in the episode description. And please, if you enjoyed this show, make sure you go leave a rating, leave a review, share it with others. It really helps the show to reach new listeners if you take a moment to do that, and it is sincerely appreciated. Shout out to the artist Cat Lines, who helped me to redesign the podcast logo to the beautiful magical teacup you see today. See you, mystical friends, in the parlor next time.